Some people seem calm almost all the time, not because their lives are easier, not because they have fewer problems, and not because they're constantly chasing positivity. In fact, many of them still deal with stress, pressure, disappointment, and uncertainty just like everyone else. But there's something different about the way they move through life. Small habits, quiet behaviors that protect their peace without most people even noticing. And the strange part is, these habits usually look insignificant from the outside. A few minutes in the morning, the way they respond to frustration, what they choose to ignore. But over time, those small decisions shape the emotional direction of their entire life. Most people think happiness comes from something big: more success, more money, better timing, a different life. But the people who consistently feel calmer and emotionally lighter usually aren't relying on major changes. They're relying on patterns, small habits they repeat every day that quietly shape how they think, react, and experience life. And in this video, we're going to break down 7 of those habits. Some are simple, some are surprisingly powerful, but together they can completely change the emotional atmosphere of your daily life. The way most people start their morning is completely reactive. Before they even get out of bed, their mind is already flooded with information, notifications, messages, videos, headlines, endless scrolling. And without realizing it, they begin the day responding to the world before they've even had time to process their own thoughts. But happier people tend to do something differently. They create space before the noise begins. Even if it's only for a few minutes, they avoid immediately overwhelming their mind with stimulation. No rushing to check everything, no instant overload, just a quiet moment to wake up mentally before the outside world takes over their attention. Because mornings shape emotional momentum more than people realize. When the brain starts the day in chaos, that tension quietly follows into everything else. Every single day, small things go wrong. Someone responds coldly. A plan changes unexpectedly. You say something awkward, make a mistake, or feel ignored for a moment. Most people think these situations are harmless, but what actually drains them is how long they continue carrying them mentally afterward. They replay the moment while doing other things. A 5-second inconvenience quietly becomes an hour of emotional tension, and after enough of these moments pile up, the entire day starts to feel heavy without any obvious reason. But happier people have a different relationship with small frustrations. They notice them, but they don't hold on to them. They don't give every inconvenience permanent space in their mind. Because emotional exhaustion often doesn't come from major problems. It comes from constantly carrying things that should have been released hours ago. Most people think happiness disappears because of big problems, while their mind is actually being drained by dozens of tiny moments they never learn to let go of. A lot of people live on autopilot without realizing it. Wake up, work, responsibilities, sleep, repeat. And when every day starts feeling emotionally identical, life slowly becomes heavy. The happiest people break that pattern intentionally. They create small moments of anticipation throughout their day. It doesn't have to be dramatic. A peaceful walk after work, their favorite coffee in the morning, time with someone who makes them feel relaxed, even a quiet hour alone. What matters is the feeling that something positive still exists ahead of them. Because when the future feels emotionally empty, motivation slowly fades. But when there's even a small moment worth looking forward to, the entire day feels lighter. A comparison has become almost automatic. Every day, people are exposed to someone achieving more, looking better, living differently, or appearing happier. And after enough exposure, it quietly changes the way they see themselves. Suddenly, their own progress feels smaller. Even good moments lose value because they're constantly being measured against someone else's highlight reel. But happier people usually protect themselves from this cycle, not by pretending they never compare, but by becoming more intentional about what they allow into their attention every day. They spend less time consuming things that trigger unnecessary self-evaluation and more time focusing on what actually matters in their own life, because comparison creates emotional noise, and over time, that noise becomes exhausting. The happiest people aren't always the luckiest. Most of the time, they're simply the ones who learned how to protect their energy, attention, and peace in small ways most people ignore every day. One habit that emotionally balanced people almost always share is movement. Not perfection, not extreme workouts, just movement. Because when the body stays inactive for too long, the mind often begins to feel stuck too. Thoughts become heavier, stress lasts longer, and even simple tasks start feeling mentally exhausting. But people who maintain a healthier emotional state usually understand something important. Movement changes mental energy. A short walk, stretching, exercise, or simply going outside can interrupt emotional stagnation in a powerful way. And the key difference is this: they don't only move when they feel motivated. They move because they understand how much better they feel afterward. One of the biggest differences between emotionally exhausted people and emotionally stable people is where their attention goes every day. Most people don't realize how much their mental state is shaped by constant stimulation. Endless scrolling, negative content, notifications, pressure, information overload. And when attention is constantly scattered, emotional clarity disappears. The brain never fully rests because something is always pulling at it. But happier people become more selective with their attention. They don't give every thought, notification, or problem equal importance. They understand that attention is limited, and whatever repeatedly enters the mind eventually shapes emotional reality. So instead of consuming everything around them, they intentionally create distance from things that leave them mentally overwhelmed. Most people try to completely change their life overnight, but the people who seem genuinely peaceful usually changed something much smaller first, the habits shaping their mind every single day. At the end of the day, most people never truly stop thinking. Their body may be resting, but mentally, they're still carrying conversations, unfinished tasks, regrets, and worries about tomorrow. And over time, that constant mental activity creates emotional exhaustion that sleep alone can't fully fix. But happier people create some form of mental closure before the day ends. Not perfectly, and not through some complicated routine. Sometimes it's as simple as reflecting quietly for a moment, writing things down, or mentally accepting that the day is finished. Because when the mind never feels complete, stress continues running quietly in the background. But when people create even a small sense of closure, the brain finally gets permission to slow down. And that changes how the next morning feels emotionally. Happiness usually doesn't arrive in one dramatic moment. Most of the time, it's built quietly through small behaviors that slowly shape the way a person experiences everyday life. The way they protect their attention, the way they recover from stress, the way they respond to frustration. Tiny patterns that seem insignificant at first, but eventually become the emotional foundation of daily life. And that's why some people seem calmer, even when life isn't perfect. Not because they've escaped problems, but because they've learned how to stop unnecessary chaos from taking over their mind. Because in the end, happiness is rarely built through massive changes all at once. It's built through small moments repeated consistently. A quieter morning, letting small frustrations pass, protecting your attention, giving your mind space to rest. And over time, those small habits stop feeling like effort. They simply become part of who you are and the way you move through life every day. So maybe happiness isn't something far away that only certain people get to experience. Maybe it's something much quieter than that. Something built through small choices most people overlook every single day. And honestly, sometimes the smallest habits create the biggest emotional shifts over time. If even one of these habits connected with you today, try paying attention to it over the next few days and notice how it affects your mindset. And if you enjoy videos about psychology, human behavior, and the small patterns that shape everyday life, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot more coming.